Something has gone terribly amiss in the popular understanding of what Plato is trying to describe with his concept of the world of forms. And it's actually quite a big problem. During my public school education and ongoing YouTube infotainment habit, I learned that Platonic forms, at least in theory, work something like this: that a chair has the form of chairness, a sort of spiritual ideal which exists beyond the material world. Thus, the eternal idea of chair can be approached, but never fully instantiated in matter. In other words, man comes into contact with this world of forms when attempting to create something in the physical world without ever actually being able to realize the form itself. This explanation has always struck me as a bit silly. So what? Does that mean that the iPhone 15 participates in the form of iPhone 15-ness? Or is it that the form is the same as the past 4 iPhones, just with each one approximating the true form of iPhone a little bit more every time, or perhaps a little less every time? Where is the distinction between where each form begins and ends? Is each object then ultimately just a form unto itself? After studying under some actual Platonic scholars at Ralston College, I now realize that, at least in my opinion, this is largely a satire of what Plato actually believed was the world of forms. A satire based on the Aristotelian notion of utility as the foundation for conceptual categories. Here's what I mean by that. For Aristotle, the telos, or end, of a chair as it was made is to ultimately be sat upon. It could be used for other purposes, such as starting a campfire or reaching a dead light bulb high on the ceiling. But the end, or telos, of a chair is not to be burned as kindling, nor to be used as a step stool. The ultimate purpose of a chair's existence is to be sat upon. Other things can be used as chairs, such as tables or tree stumps, but they do not participate in the category of chair, because that is not the end, the ultimate purpose of a table nor a tree stump, just an auxiliary purpose. Platonic forms, on the other hand, are altogether more slippery than Aristotelian categories. Plato admits as much, that the forms, or itheia, are indeed ephemeral in nature. In fact, he never actually explicitly explains what the forms are in any of his dialogues. There is a level of induction necessary to figure out what Plato means when he's discussing the forms, or itheia, of a thing. And it is that very method of dialogical induction that Plato used throughout his written works to approximate what he intuited to be the forms of things. Now, this is getting all a little bit high in the sky, so let's take it down to a concrete example, a bit of a thought experiment, to help us identify the form of something ordinary. Let's say a whisk. The common stainless steel kitchen whisk might be said to participate in the form of whiskness in the aforementioned misconception of Plato's forms, but that would be much more similar to Aristotle's view of all whisks being in the same category because they were made for the same ultimate end. Since whisks share the purpose of beating food mixtures for cooking, even if they are different sizes, shapes, or materials, they belong to the same functional category. However, when examining the Platonic form, which whisk seems to participate in, it appears to be something more akin to expansive surface area form, since the many small wires that make up a whisk give it a sort of natural kinship to other things which, for one reason or another, also seek to increase their surface area for a different purpose. Now, this may be a bit of a stretch, but hear me out. Trees, with their narrow trunks and stretching boughs, participate in this form of spreading out upper area in order to increase contact for a desired end. So do lungs, in an inverted sense, with their myriad minuscule branches and pockets, which make contact between blood and air. Thus, when some particular task necessitates high surface area, it is very likely that the organism or object involved will converge on a similar form. It may not be immediately apparent how a cooking whisk and lungs are analogous in any way, and it is indeed entirely possible that I'm off in my understanding of Platonic forms. they are, by their very nature, beyond rational comprehension, since they are ultimately philosophical thought experiments, attempting to describe the ephemeral and the transcendent with inherently limited linguistic descriptions. As soon as you start comparing functions, you may have already left the world of forms entirely and entered the world of Aristotle, which I admit I just did with my whisk example. However, it is nearly impossible to leave behind the world of function while using language, because our language is built upon symbolic representations of things that our bodies experience and do, ultimately. Artistic uses of language, like poetry, attempt to do this, to bring language out of the prosaic and into the world of forms, as Plato might call it. And that is why poems and song lyrics often strike us in such a deeply resonant way. But philosophizing artistically is a tall order, and I admit I'm probably not up to that task. I still hope that this whisk example was able to shed a little bit of clarity onto Plato's concept of the world of forms. At least I hope that it does better than the chair and chairness example, which frankly I have always thought was quite silly, and I think that Plato would too. Now, why would misinterpreting Plato's world of forms be a problem? If it's just a thought experiment anyways, what's the big deal in getting a thought experiment wrong, especially one from almost 2,500 years ago? Well, this whole chair and chairness ordeal, I think, is just a single symptom of a broader syndrome, which is widespread disengagement from the Western humanistic tradition. Our contemporary world has made a God out of utility and utility alone, and actively denigrates anything which does not have clear benefits, be it financial or pleasure-based. And a case in point is this inversion of ideals and the bastardization of Platonic forms, as discussed above. Our computation-centric minds have lost sight of the usefulness of the apparently useless. It is all too easy to write off the humanistic tradition, philosophy, art, and literature as frivolous or even irrelevant in our contemporary world. But it is by these common points of reference that we as a culture are able to communicate at all. Any of you who know of Ian McGilchrist's book, The Master and His Emissary, will certainly see some connections here between the right hemisphere's worldview and that of the left hemisphere. If you don't know what I'm talking about, consider watching my summary. I'll put a link up for it here in the video. When misinterpretations of insightful works like those of Plato take hold in a culture, we lose the ability to engage with the foundational texts like those written by Plato, and like those written by Aristotle, and like those written by Boethius and Marcus Aurelius, and all of these people who make up what can be considered the Western canon. This is a problem because as that process of degradation happens, we lose the symbols through which we communicate as a culture and as a society, be that amongst each other as peers, or really more importantly, between generations. When we lose the symbols and concepts of our cultural heritage, the wisdom of our forefathers becomes withered and dead. And then, like the Tower of Babel, we are unable to communicate even with our very own neighbors. Recontextualization of past wisdom is always necessary to revitalize it, but we dispense with it wholesale at our great peril. We need Plato much more than we realize. And these mental hang-ups about chairs and chairness, they unnecessarily block Plato and other great philosophers' intellectual influence from permeating through history down to the modern time and allowing us to engage meaningfully with the transcendent. If you found this at all interesting, and you want to join me on my journey through the Western canon, trying to remove the misconceptions that are so unassumedly put upon us as contemporary men and women, consider liking this video, leave a comment with your thoughts and questions, and subscribe to this channel so that you can be notified when I post other videos like this. Let us all rediscover together what it means to be human. And as always, gnothi se afton.